Good morning, everyone. Yesterday, I had an opportunity to do something really nice for somebody. And thanks to Jeannie, actually. We went to Denny's for breakfast yesterday morning. We were just about finished with our breakfast, more like brunch, but we were just about finished, and Jeannie was sitting where she could see out the window, where the cars were all parked. And there was this older man, probably my age, but anyway, gray-headed and white-headed and big beard. Anyway, he had just gotten in his car, and he left his wallet sitting on top of the car. So Jeannie saw it, and she said, "Mike, he's about to drive off and leave his wallet sitting on his car." So I got up and ran outside, and everybody in the restaurant's looking at me. What is he doing? And I ran out there, and I walked up to the window. I caught him. I said, "How are you today, sir?" He said, "Fine." I said, "Well, you're about to have a bad day." So what are you talking about? So I reached up and got his wallet and handed it to him. You never saw anybody so grateful for something. Anyway, it made my day. I felt good about it. He felt good about it. You can lose that wallet and have to replace credit cards, and driver's license, and all the stuff that goes with losing your wallet. So it was a good experience, that thing.
God put you in the right spot at the right time.
The right spot at the right time. Yep. We had a guy at the Veterans Administration Hospital, a couple months ago, Bud, that the guy lost his wallet out in the parking lot. Weren't you there that day? Yeah. I thought he was going to have a heart attack, really. He was so upset with it. And what he had done, he had stopped at McDonald's and got a breakfast sandwich and some stuff for his breakfast, and drove to the VA, got out of his car, thought he set his wallet down next to him, got out, came back, couldn't find it anywhere. He looked, the police, he was so upset, the police came out, and they all went and helped us. I mean, the Veterans Administration police. All of the volunteers that were available went out and looked. Some of the staff went out and looked. We looked everywhere for where he had been for that wallet. What he had done was, you might remember this, he put it accidentally into the bag that his breakfast was in. So about an hour later, when he decides to find it, well, he's lost it. That's it. He decides to eat his breakfast, and he starts eating his breakfast, and there it is. So that can be a serious thing. So I don't want these old people to lose their wallets, so please keep an eye on mine, would you? Well, I asked you a couple of weeks ago to look at Proverbs 11. We looked at 10 a couple of weeks ago, and I want to look at Proverbs 11. And I wanted to thank Brett for last week for his taking my place and teaching us about problem people. He told me before we started that he had read through Proverbs 11, and that just wasn't for him. And I don't get that, because this chapter deals with a lot of problem people. So anyway, we're going to look at some of the passage. We're not going to look at it verse by verse. It's too much, and we'll see. But good morning, Tim. So Proverbs 11. I want to say a word or two about the whole chapter. If you read through this chapter carefully, you will see words like righteous or righteousness, just people, blameless people, upright people. You see that over and over and over. There's some like 20 references or so. I didn't count them, but in this chapter, there's something like 20 references in these verses using the word righteous explicitly. But there's also other parallel words like blameless or just and so on. So there's a lot of things in this chapter about how a person who is blessed with God's wisdom and who is righteous because of that, how they will respond in certain situations or act in certain ways. There's a lot about how to be righteous in this chapter. And you'll remember that Proverbs is intended to give you advice, give us instructions, not advice, instructions on how to live righteously before God day by day by day. Ordinary people living in a way that pleases God. And there's a lot about how to do that or not how to do that in this chapter. So, a lot about righteousness. And there's other verses that don't use any of those words, but they're about the same thing, how to live righteously before God. So it's good. Also, there's at least 3 or 4 verses that have to do with riches and generosity. Not the same thing, but in order to be generous, most of the time you have to have something to be generous with. And so there's passages in this chapter, 3 of them, that talk about generosity and being generous with your money and the value or the not value of riches. And there's a lot about speaking. Remember we talked in chapter 10 about all the verses that had to do with talking properly before God, speaking properly to people that would be in a way pleasing to God. That theme continues in this chapter in some of the verses especially down in 12, 13, 14, 15, about talking and rightly speaking in ways that are pleasing to God. There's also a good number of verses that speak about life and death, about how wisdom leads to life and righteousness or the things associated with wisdom lead to life. So again, that's what this chapter is about, those things. And you could pick out other things. For example, if you look at Proverbs 11:1, I'm going to ask you, look at 11:1, let's read it together. Dishonest scales are an abomination to the Lord, but a just weight is his delight. What kind of a parallelism is that one? Synonymous? Antithetical? Or is it a complementary idea?
Antithetical. The but shows you it's antithetical. Usually.
I know you know that. I'm waiting with that. Yes. Spill the beans. It's antithetical because it says but. Dishonest scales, that's one side of it. The other side is just weight. So one is dishonest, one is just. And so if you were going to put a title to this, what would you say this little one proverb is about?
Honesty.
Huh?
Honesty.
Honest business, yes. Honesty in business. Of course, a believer is supposed to be honest in all things, but you need to be particularly honest in business. A lot of people aren't. When I was in Africa, I may have shared this illustration before, but you'd go to the market and you would buy rice or other commodities that were measurable that needed to be measured out. Rice, corn, millet, other things, but mostly rice. And they had a can. It was a can that had been manufactured in Europe, and it was a kind of a standard size. It contained butter in a can. You got to remember that most people didn't have refrigeration, so they had a can with butter in it. So this can was kind of a standard size, and that can became the measure for measuring out rice, corn, stuff like that, beans in the market. Well, some women were pretty clever, and they put a false bottom in the can. So so that it was about that much or so. When you looked at it, it looked normal. They were clever enough to put it deep enough to make it look normal. But when you compared the amount of rice or whatever, you were running a little short. They also sometimes put sand, white sand, in sugar. Not very good for putting in your coffee or whatever, but anyway, all kinds of little tricks that people use to be dishonest. Well, Proverbs, it's almost be honest in business, be honest in the scales that you use. You know, when you weigh things, you be honest about it. And notice that it says that the Lord doesn't like it very much. Isn't that what it says? Not exactly. Much stronger than that. It's an abomination to the Lord. What's an abomination?
It doesn't accept it. It's not acceptable.
It's totally unacceptable. It's something that frequently it will say the Lord hates so and so. That's what an abomination is. When the Lord really despises something. And why does he despise this? Because a lot of the people that are going to the market and buying these things, most of the people, are poor people. They don't have a lot of resources. And when they're going to buy something, to cheat them is something that just is totally displeasing to the Lord. You know, the rich want to cheat the rich. Well, that's one thing. But when you're going to cheat people that are poor and have very little, that's another thing altogether, really. Both of them are dishonest. But this is talking about just the normal kinds of business that you do. You weigh out something, or you say you're going to give somebody a certain amount of something, and that's what you do. You be honest. Because if you don't, it's an abomination to the Lord. Yeah, Martin.
You know, we think of this as people back in those days that did it, but we probably see more of that now than they did then. I mean, you look at it, toilet paper rolls are getting thinner, ice cream buckets are getting false bottoms, the products are getting smaller and smaller, but the prices aren't going down. They're just like, well, they're not going up. But they are, because the products are getting smaller. So
well, I really
there's a lot of that.
You go to Sam's and you can buy these boxes of potato chips and stuff, those kinds of things. They used to be where you had a pretty good amount of chips in it. Now, when you open it, you look in there and it seems like there's two chips.
Yeah, a bunch of air.
two Doritos or potato chips or whatever, Yeah, and they do that and they think we're stupid and we don't know. Well, sometimes we are stupid. It takes a while to figure it out. But some things you can figure out pretty quick. Yeah.
But they're smart. They didn't immediately change a 16-ounce package of ground coffee that was a pound and make it only 12 ounces. They gradually reduced it over a period of years, so you got used to it, but you'd still say you were getting a pound of coffee.
Yes, all kinds of.
So they never did it quickly.
Yes, there are all
like
kinds.
Sin, like with the way Satan works, like our morals now, slowly eroding away to where we don't notice.
And sometimes not so slowly.
No.
Have you noticed that when the oil price of oil goes up, that the gas stations have the price reflected that afternoon or the next morning? The price of the oil can drop 50%, and we're still looking at the same prices.
It takes 6 months to go down.
It takes 6 months to go down. I heard some guy trying to explain that. It's just they do it because they can do it and they get away with it. Well, Christians, the people of God in the Old Testament as well, that is unacceptable. God is not happy when we cheat people in business or in any way at all. So, that's one little proverb, but has such implications for life. When you read these proverbs, you've got to think them through and think, how does this apply to me? Do I ever do anything like this to cheat people? Sometimes you go to the restaurant and you get a big plate and a little helping of something, and is this steak really 10 ounces or is it 8? You know, that kind of stuff.
I think what people tend to do is take advantage of those people who may not read the fine print. You don't know how many ounces you need because you've never read it. You've never paid attention to how many servings. Servings get smaller, first of all. And so they take advantage in what they think is being true.
Well, have you ever seen one of those commercials? That's true. Have you ever seen one of those commercials on television where they're required by law to have a warning about something, and they read it to you, and you couldn't begin to follow what they're saying. Or they show it in the screen on the television in such small print you can't read it anyway, or they don't give you enough time to read it if you could read it. So all of those.
But they are complying, so if there's that legalism that lets them get by.
They're complying with the letter of the law, not the intent of the law.
What they don't realize is if a company would come out and say on television or whatever, we are so sorry, we're going to have to bring this down to this many ounces at this time where the economy is, we can't afford to do the other. We appreciate your understanding. They would probably be making money in all this.
Or they could say, we're going to leave it the same size and raise the price because it's costing more.
That's right. They'd be
Anyway,
very surprised.
we all understand the point that God expects His people to be honest in business and really honest in everything. This would go beyond just skills, but cheating people, taking advantage of people, misleading people, all these things would be implications of this kind of a proverb. Well, that's just the first one, and we get into all of these proverbs about all kinds of things in this chapter. But again, a theme runs through here of righteousness. It is righteous, or just, or blameless to have honest scales and do business honestly. Even though the word righteousness isn't used, it's talking about righteous behavior. Being a righteous person in terms of dealing with people in business and selling them things in the marketplace. So, the dishonest scales are an abomination to the Lord, but a just weight is His delight. That's amazing that the Lord looks at everything, all the little stuff. Sometimes we think, this is no big deal. But it's a big deal. When the Lord says it's an abomination, that's a word you ought to pay attention to. All right, so look at verse 4. I've asked you to go through this chapter, read these, and if there's some of them that you want to comment on, please feel free to do that. So I did the same thing, so I'm going to comment on the ones that I want to comment on. Most of them are very self-explanatory. Most of the Proverbs take very little explanation. Some of them take a little bit, especially when you're trying to translate them from Hebrew into English. There's sometimes a little difficulty to understand. I'll point one or two of those out in a little bit. But look at verse 4. Riches do not profit in the day of wrath, but righteousness delivers from death. What does it mean, riches do not profit in the day of wrath? What's a day of wrath?
Judgment day. God's judgment day.
Okay, one could be the final judgment, but it doesn't have to be the final. It doesn't have to be, the end times.
You don't have to be, no matter how rich you are, when your day comes, when the day of wrath is, money doesn't come.
Yeah. I heard somebody ask Dave Ramsey one time about buying gold and silver. You see all of these advertisements on television telling us to buy gold and silver, and that'll be your security in difficult times, and the stock market collapses and you've got lots of gold and silver. Well, there's a little problem with that. I lived in a country in Ghana in the 70s, 80s, that there was famine. The economy had really collapsed. It didn't matter how much gold you had or silver, and they've had gold in Ghana, had a lot of gold mines in Ghana, but you couldn't buy anything because there wasn't anything. So in the day of disaster, in the day when things are really tough and times are difficult, riches are not going to help you necessarily. They don't profit when things go really bad. You can't buy life, you can't buy health with riches. But on the other hand, righteousness, that the same theme that's running through this chapter, running through the whole book of Proverbs, righteousness delivers from death. Again, life and death is a constant theme that we see in the book of Proverbs. Righteousness leads to life. Unrighteousness, wickedness, evil leads to death. So you're going to see a number of places where the riches, there's a problem with riches. And look at verse 16. Has to do with that as well. A gracious woman retains honor, but ruthless men retain riches. That's another comparison of the same kind. In verse 5, day of wrath and righteousness avoids death. In this one, a gracious woman, a woman of grace, that will be righteousness as well, that retains honor, but ruthless men keep their riches. That's what they're after. She's after her honor. Ruthless people, evil people, will keep their riches. The riches are what's important to them. What have they done when they do that? What do we do when we make riches the most important thing? What we really should we call that?
Another God.
Made it your God.
Made it into God, made it into an idol, didn't we? You could look at verse 28. This one's real clear. He who trusts in his riches will fall, but the righteous will flourish like foliage. Remember, this is in a country that in Israel, in which a lot of the country is desert, small rainfall. So when they said something will flourish like foliage, that is a way of talking about a really wonderful thing. That it will flourish, it will grow, it will be green in this dry desert land. We know about that. If we didn't have all these canals running all over the place, putting water out of the river in here, where we're living right here would still look like a desert, just like out north of here. We have all the green foliage in our yards because of the water that we get. Well, Israel was like that without the canals and stuff. Now they do, but back in the days that Proverbs was written, the days of Solomon and following, it wasn't like that at all. So, again, the theme of riches flows through the book of Proverbs. Riches in themselves aren't bad, but it's when they begin to take the place of God that they become a really serious problem. I hate to quote Dave Ramsey again, but he loves to say that money really in itself is not evil. It's what you do or don't do with your money that becomes a serious problem.
The love of it.
The love of it.
Verse 28.
The making it into an idol.
And trusting. Verse 28, we're to trust.
Yeah, you trust that instead of God. Trusting your riches. So, again, these things aren't hard to understand. If you look at verse 9, 12, 13, 14, 15, they're all talking about speaking, issues involved with speaking. They don't mention speaking directly. But the hypocrite with his mouth destroys his neighbor, in verse 9. We've all experienced that. We've seen it. What do we call it today? When somebody goes on television and is intentionally trying to destroy the character. Okay?
Character assassination.
Character assassination.
What's the word you're looking for?
There you go.
No, the word I was looking for was in my mind, and I know that doesn't happen to any of you ever.
No.
But what is that word that they use when they talk about political assassinations today? Can't think of it. I'll think of it when we're in Worcester.
We'll speak about then.
But it's a character. It is a character assassination. Words can destroy people. Words can make you not trust someone. Words can make you think that a good person is bad, or a bad person is good. Words have ways of doing that. You know, you remember when your mother used to tell you, well, Michael, sticks and stones can break your bones, but words will never hurt you. Oh, Harkle, that's not true. That is not true. Words can be very hurtful to people. You say things that are mean and cruel and vicious. So a hypocrite with his mouth can destroy his neighbor, and they often do. Notice it's a hypocrite in this case, somebody that has got a mask on, pretending to be something that he's not. Oh, I'm so righteous. Now let me share this prayer request with you. Did you know that? And then they'll tell you something awful about somebody. That's just gossip. It's not true. It's just slander. Yeah, well, that's what hypocrites do. But through knowledge, the righteous will be delivered. Again, the same theme. Righteousness will deliver from death in verse 4. Here, it just delivers it from that kind of thing. If you've got knowledge, you've got wisdom, you will understand that what this person is telling you, doesn't measure up, isn't true necessarily. Or you reserve judgment until you really know the truth of the matter. That's what knowledge will help you to do. And so it will help the righteous to be delivered. How about verse 12? He who is devoid of wisdom despises his neighbor. No wisdom, he despises his neighbor. But a man of understanding holds his peace. Now, this one's a little bit more complicated, maybe. What does it mean for a person without wisdom? In other words, he's what? A fool. Maybe just simple, but probably in the extreme it's talked about here. Probably talking about a fool. Despises his neighbor. This isn't just, a mental despising. This is when, like in verse 9, you speak to destroy them, you say awful things, you do things to them, you make life miserable for your neighbors, you do, there's all kinds of things you can do to make things hard on your neighbors and to show you're despising them, the reality of that. But a man of understanding holds his peace. I told you that this verse is talking about speaking or talking. A man of understanding holds his peace. What do you think that?
Minds his tongue.
He minds his tongue. Yeah.
I think it has, this passage has everything to do with humility, knowing that we're not supposed to think of us as better because we're all sinners. And I don't know, that just strikes me as...
Well, I think that's right. If you look at verse 2 of the same chapter, when pride comes, then comes shame, but with the humble is wisdom. Humility is part of wisdom. You realize you don't know everything. You don't have all the knowledge in the world. And you seek for understanding, you seek to do right, you seek to do good, but you also know that, that if it weren't for the grace of God, you'd be right there with the fool kind of situation. So a man of understanding holds his peace. He doesn't speak. Another little proverb my mother said that was true. If you can't say something nice about somebody, don't say anything. And that's a good one, isn't it?
Yes, Vandy's mother said that to him, and it's true.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of these proverbs that we have that are just common in our culture that are true. They're good advice. And a lot of them are scriptural. We find something very parallel to it in Scripture. So hold your peace. Don't talk when you in a destructive way. Don't do that. It'll show. There's a proverb that says something like a fool opens his mouth. People think you're a fool when you open your mouth, and they know they can just verify it, kind of thing. You show it's true. They're right, and that's kind of what is being taught here. I think. The same kind of thing. But you hold your peace. You don't talk when you don't know what you're talking about. You don't hurt people by your words when you're. It's also saying you need to be a good neighbor. Saying you need to be a good neighbor. Yes, Rebecca.
There's well, not like current in the 21st century, but I grew up hearing this. So it's an old proverb of current day. Remember to load your brain before you shoot off your mouth.
Think before you speak. Yeah, kind of thing. Yeah. One of my daughters, when she was here, I would say it right in front of her, because I used to tell her when she was a little girl that she could talk faster than she could think. She was an incessant talker, and sometimes it was wise and sometimes it wasn't, but she could really just go. And I used to tell her that, Alicia, like I said, if she was here, I could say that. She laughed, but you can talk faster than you can think. And that's the opposite of what you're saying. Think before you talk. Don't talk. It goes on in verse 13, a talebearer reveals secrets. Ever know anybody like that? Somebody that goes around telling tales? And you try to get them to tell them, I'm telling you this in confidence. Have you ever known anybody in a church or a business or somewhere else in school, somewhere, wherever you work or whatever, that if you want everybody in the whole place to know, you tell them? Yeah. Well, that's what that's talking about. A talebearer reveals secrets, can't keep their mouth shut. But he who is faithful, of a faithful spirit, conceals the matter. A faithful person, a righteous person, can keep a secret. You can tell, it's not, these aren't military secrets and that kind of stuff. We're talking about just confidences that you give to somebody else, and you tell them something that, you're worried about and you're concerned about, you're asking to pray for you, and please don't tell anybody else about this. And then you go and find out that they blabbed it everywhere in the whole place, and everybody knows about it. Well, that's a talebearer doing that, but a faithful person doesn't do that. A righteous person doesn't do that. Now we've got to get to number 22. This is my favorite proverb. Actually, it's not, but I like to say that because of the nature of it. As a ring of gold in a swine's snout is a lovely woman who lacks discretion. Who puts a gold ring or a valuable jewel, a valuable ring of gold, and a pig's nose? A fool. Well, but it's being compared to a woman that lacks discretion. It could be a man that lacks discretion. That is really not the issue. Except that women wear more jewelry than men do. That's probably the reason. Verse 2 only. The word discretion, and the reason I wanted to mention this proverb, the word discretion literally means taste. The Hebrew word, the movie is about to begin. Please turn off your phones. It means taste. And it has the idea, the reason they translated discretion, because it has the idea of, like when you're a cook and you're making soup and you want to add a little salt to it or spice to it. So you put a little bit in, stir it up good, cook a little more, take a spoon, see what it tastes like. Not enough. You gotta be careful you don't get too much, but you can't take it out. But anyway, you put in a little more and then you do that again, and pretty soon you get to see how it tastes. If it tastes like you want it to taste. Well, the idea I think comes from that a person can taste a little and begin to decide whether something is good or bad to eat. And so, used in a figurative sense, it means can you use your intelligence, your understanding, your wisdom to determine if something is right or wrong or good or bad. Okay, so you taste things to see if they're good or bad. But this woman can't do that. She's like the gold ring in a pig's snout. She looks beautiful, she looks wonderful, she looks attractive, and the men would all like her, but she has no discretion, no good taste. And so it kind of puts a big mar in the beauty. We have a proverb that says beauty is only skin deep. And it is. You can be a beautiful physical person and no good, really. And we all know lots of people that are the opposite. They're maybe not attractive physically, not beautiful, except you get to know them and their character shines through and that wisdom of God shines through and that understanding shines through. And people that are not really attractive physically sometimes become very attractive people because they are the opposite of the gold ring and a pig's mouth kind of thing. Well, we'll stop there for today. Just move on to chapter 12. I don't know how much longer we're going to do this, but I'm wanting you to see it's not difficult to interpret most of these proverbs. And I'm just trying to help us do that. So go on to chapter 12. We'll talk about what we're going to go next week. Okay? God bless all of you. And Nancy, would you mind praying for us as we close?
Dear Heavenly Father, just come to you very briefly for this